on the Salem Radio Network begins in 5 minutes and 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show begins in 5 seconds.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. And a tip of the hat to you, Great Britain. You have spoken. And the West is saved for at least the time being. You got to beat socialism in every single generation, but it is beaten and beaten badly. Boris Johnson's Tory Conservatives last night secured a vast majority in Britain's 650-seat House of Commons. There's one seat yet to be declared, but the Tories had won 364. Almost, they have 79 more seats than all the others combined. So a majority of 80. A majority of 80. Everything is on the table. Boris Johnson, the ebullient leader of the Conservative Party, came down after the election results were in and made this speech, cut number 23.
I will make it my mission to work night and day, flat out, to prove you right in voting for me this time and to earn your support in the future. And I say to you that in this election, your voice has been heard, and about time too. Because we politicians have squandered the last 3.5 years, in squabbles about Brexit. We've even been arguing and about the tone of our arguments. I will put an end to all that nonsense, and we will get Brexit done on time by the 31st of January. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. Leaving the European Union as one united kingdom, taking back control of our laws, borders, money, our trade, immigration system, delivering on the democratic mandate of the people. And at the same time, this One Nation Conservative government will massively increase our investment in the NHS, the health service that represents the very best of our country, with this single beautiful idea that whoever we are, rich, poor, young, old, the NHS is there for us when we are sick. And every day that service performs miracles. And that is why the NHS is this One Nation Conservative government's top priority. And so we will deliver 50,000 more nurses and 50 million more GP surgery appointments. And how many new hospitals? And we will deliver long-term NHS budget enshrined in law, 650 million extra every week. Health Secretary, and all the other priorities that you, the people of this country, voted for. Record spending on schools, an Australian-style points-based immigration system, more police. How many? Colossal new investments in infrastructure and science, using our incredible technological advantages to make this country the cleanest, greenest on earth, with the most far-reaching environmental programme. And you, the people of this country, voted to be carbon neutral in this election. You voted to be carbon neutral by 2050, and we'll do it. You also voted to be carbon neutral by Christmas, by the way, and we'll do that too. You voted for all these things, and it is now this government, this people's government, it's our solemn duty to deliver on each and every one of those commitments. And it is a great and heavy responsibility, a sacred trust for me, for every newly elected Conservative MP, for everyone in this room and everyone in this party. And I repeat that in winning this election, we have won votes and the trust of people who have never voted Conservative before, and people who have always voted for other parties. Those people want change. We cannot, must not let them down. And in delivering change, we must change too. We must recognise the incredible reality that we now speak as a one-nation Conservative Party, literally for everyone from Woking to Workington, from Kensington, I'm proud to say, to Clewitt South, from Surrey Heath to Sedgefield, from Wimbledon to Wolverhampton. And as the nation hands us this historic mandate, we must rise to the challenge and to the level of expectations.
It is such a resounding win. It is almost impossible to put into words other than what The Economist, a left-wing magazine, said. There is no doubting the strength of Mr. Johnson's position. He has established his personal authority by running a campaign that beat most expectations. His party has been purged of rebels, and their place is taken by a new intake that owes its loyalty to him personally. Having lost control of Parliament for years, Downing Street is once more in charge. We're going to have to wait and see if any of the American Democrats who have been launched on this absurd impeachment inquiry look up from their navels and look at the television set where the blue bubble in this country is. I probably have to assume, I didn't watch the impeachment thing yesterday. I was in cars all day listening to bits and babs of it. I assume the blue bubble in this country did not even notice the earthquake across the Atlantic and our special relationship partner. So they will be excused if they do not realize that the bell is tolling, and it's tolling for thee. It's tolling for silly obstructionism. It is tolling for out-of-step elites. The signals being sent by blue bubble media in this country and red bubble media in Great Britain are not accurate. They don't get the message. They don't understand. And they're going to get blown away here like they got blown away in the United Kingdom last night if they insist on not doing the people's business, not doing what they promised to do, lower medical costs, lower prescription drug prices, bring home USMCA, go get a new United States-UK free trade deal. If I were Donald Trump, I would have Secretary of State Pompeo, Secretary of Defense Esper, Secretary of the Treasury, Mnuchin, National Security Advisor, O'Brien, Trade Representative Lighthizer on Air Force Two with the Vice President headed over to England today to sit down and work out the new U.S.-UK free trade deal that will go into effect on January 31 or February 1st after they exit the European Union. John Bercow, that blowhard, who did so much to frustrate Great Britain, was on Sky News the whole night trying to look like it wasn't about him when it was in fact an enormous repudiation of him and every other elitist grandee who stood in the way of what the people demanded when they voted to leave 3 years ago. Here's John Bercow denying, in John Bercow fashion, that he was one of the obstacles to Brexit. Cut number 25.
Plotting. Well, plotting is a rather subjective and loaded term, not the sort of term that I would associate
I might have
with
seen
someone
it,
like
might
you.
Have seen, well, I saw it on the front page. I saw it on the front
moderation.
page of some popular newspapers.
Oh, you mean some down-market rag?
You may say that. I can't possibly comment, John.
Do you mean some organ of well-known bigotry? I think you do.
I mean no such thing.
I think it's some Pujadiste newspaper scribbling away inanely and constituting tomorrow's fish and chip paper. No, the responsibility of members of Parliament is to do what they believe to be right. The fact that they might be subject to denunciation and, in a sense, journalistic flagellation is really neither here nor there. I always took the view that I should try from the chair to do what I believe to be right. The fact that somebody was sounding off in the background and saying how awful it was and what a disgrace I was and so on and so forth didn't lose me a wink of sleep. I couldn't give a tinker's
Did you even read
cuss.
them? I mean, it was water off a duck's back, wasn't it?
Now, I got to read to you
most
what Dominic Cummings, the Prime Minister's advisor, said. He said, after the shock of the referendum, MPs and journalists should have taken a deep breath and had a lot of self-reflection of why they misunderstood what was going on in the country, but instead a lot of people just doubled down on their own ideas and, well, blanked up even more. All of these better-than-average educated Remainer campaigner types who have waved around for 8 weeks for the last 4 months didn't understand what was going on and didn't understand they were driving everyone mad. Hopefully now they'll learn because it's
The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 45 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show on the Salem Radio Network returns from break in 15 seconds. The Hugh Hewitt Show returns from break 5 seconds.
Hewitt, what a great sound crashing across the Atlantic as the special relationship is back on great solid ground. Donald Trump tweeting out congratulations to Boris Johnson. Let's get everybody over there. Let's get the deal linked up. Let's get the military, the Royal Navy coming full back. Let's get the pound free of the euro. In fact, let's do the pre-market check early. Brought to you by Birch Gold. Now, Birch Gold is a terrific sponsor. And I encourage you to load up on physical gold and silver. Don't over-diversify, but diversify. If you're going to buy gold, you need to make at least a $5,000 purchase. But you may want to do that and put it in your safety deposit box. More than that, in fact. And I think you're going to be in for some inflation. And that's why I tell you that. I'll tell you why in just a second looking at the markets. But I think we're going to have some inflation, and that's usually a good time for gold. Gold is up to $1,476 an ounce this morning. And it's a good day to call Birch Gold at 1-800-434-GOLD, 1-800-434-4653. Minimum purchase, $5,000. Also a good day to roll part of your IRA or your 401k into a precious metals-backed IRA, physical precious metals. And Birch Gold Group can do that. You can get the information at hughgold.com, H-U-G-H gold.com, or just give them a call. And they will tell you how to do that, and they will send you $5,000 or more of gold to put away, because as I say, I think this at 1476, I think we've got inflation coming, because we're going to have a booming economy in the United States, a booming economy in the United Kingdom. They'll even drag along their backwards cousins across the channel in the European Union. And the EU's got to change, or they'll have other states leave. The 10-year Treasury is at 1.9% this morning, ticking up. Dow was up 220 yesterday. The NASDAQ up 63. S&P up 26. This morning, the S&P's up 16. The NASDAQ is up 55. The Dow is up 158. The London index is up almost 2%. Japan up 2.5% overnight. Hong Kong up 2.5% overnight. The British pound is up to $1.34. That's up 0.65% overnight as freedom celebrates in the financial markets. And when the financial markets get bubbly, it's time to get some gold. Go to Birch Gold, 1-800-434-GOLD. Also want to say, celebrate the old-fashioned conservative way by helping others. The Salvation Army, you folks are so great. $179,909 donated thus far. Like I said, I want to get to $250,000, so I have $70,000 to go. If one of you would like to write a check this morning, that would be great. But if 100 of you want to write $70 checks, that would be $700 checks, that would be great. I don't do math. All I know is that you are doing great things by going to the Salvation Army. It's Friday the 13th, the luckiest Friday the 13th I can remember. But it is still unlucky for some people. There's one low-income family in Huntington, West Virginia, though, that thanks to the Salvation Army, their luck has changed forever. Their car was stolen. Getting the kids to school, visiting a doctor became a challenge. So the Salvation Army stepped in. They donated a vehicle. to 8 local repair auto shops that got together, 8 of them, and fixed this car to get the family back on the road. Tom Corder works at D&T Auto. He and the other mechanics helped fix up the car for the Salvation Army client.
Napa donates the parts that we need to refurbish these cars, and then all the guys pitch in time. You know, the guys work on them, get them fixed up. We're all business owners, you know, and we get our living from the community, and it's just a way to give back.
Way to give back. Now, Dwayne couldn't fix that car. I could help on the carburetor or rewire the ignition. But you can help with $10, $25, $50, $500, whatever you are able, as you are given, so you can contribute. Oh, someone just took us over $180,000. Thank you so much to Joe Jersenis, who gave us Joe, thank you. $104. Keep it coming during the break. Celebrate freedom in Great Britain. Boris Johnson, the old-fashioned way, with generosity to those who have nothing via the Salvation Army Red Kettle at HughHewitt.com. Hit that kettle again. Make it ring like it did in England last night, and I'll be right back on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you in part by Birch Gold Group.
Hewitt Show returns from break. 5 seconds.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt on the day after a great victory for freedom. The West won yesterday in the United Kingdom, and I am spending my time talking providentially with Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College, as I'm putting over at hughhewitt.com. There are very few Americans walking around who have been on good terms with Baroness Thatcher, escorted her while in the States, who have written about Winston Churchill, served as an assistant to Churchill's official biographer, Sir Martin Gilbert, and married to an Englishwoman turned American. And that is a category of one, I believe, and it's Larry Arnn. Am I right about all those things, Dr. Larry Arnn?
Well, she did come to Hillsdale College campus, but not while I was here. She spoke for the college 3 times while I was here in other places.
Well, and then you did escort her around.
I used to go see her in London.
Yes.
And, she was, especially after she finished, she was delightful. Penny and I had lunch with her, I don't know how many times, but quite a few. And, we did that statue of her here, and she approved it. And there's that funny thing. She's a very good correspondent, and so I wrote her a letter. She approved